We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot, season number 4, episode number 41. And yeah, man, I hope you guys have had a great weekend. I call this episode number 41 Championship Edition. First and foremost, man, if it's your first time listening, we on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot. We provide high-fire takes and analysis across the sporting landscape. And to my OGs, man, I appreciate the check-in. And yeah, I call this Championship Edition. First and foremost, man, congratulations to the UConn Lady Huskies, man. As Gino Auriemma has won his 12th national championship at UConn. Man, congratulations to them. Praise Breakers goes out as an NCAA champion. It's been a long road for her at UConn with the various injuries, but able to bounce back. One of the most polarizing players in all of women's college basketball, man. So congratulations to them. Also, too, congratulations, man, to the Florida Gators on the men's side winning the national championship in an epic game against the Houston Cougars. Man, that was a great game. Oh, man, that was a great one. Classic game, man, as Florida was able to come back down by 12 to win that game 65-63. You know we gonna get into that. Also, too, man, we got a record breaker out here, man. Alexander Ovechkin breaking Wayne Gretzky all-time NHL goal record. No, that definitely was a record that I thought I would never see broken. I thought I would never see that record broken from Wayne Gretzky, you know, the most infamous hockey player of all time, considered the greatest hockey player of all time. And Ovechkin, man, was able to break that record. He just had an amazing career, man. Over 20 years, man, for the Washington Capitals, and winning the Stanley Cup, you know, a few years back for that organization. And, you know, I thought it was very, very classy, man, that Wayne Gretzky and Gary Bettman, the commissioner of the NHL, in attendance, man. And he's had an amazing career. And, you know, hockey is not at the forefront of the American sports landscape. They're probably sitting at 4th or 5th in our world sports lexicon. But, you know, I come from a hockey town, man, coming from Chicago. You know, I witnessed my Chicago Blackhawks, you know, have our little dynasty, have our little run, you know, several years back. You know, hopefully we can get off the ground, you know, get our organization, man, back into the forefront of the lexicon. But, man, it was just a tremendous record, man. Like I said, I never thought I would ever see that record get broke. You know, he just had an amazing career, OG in the sport, you know, over 40 plus goals this season. So it's not like he limped into the record. You know, he's had an amazing season so far, man, for the Washington Capitals. And just to be able for him to break it before the end of the regular season was definitely a little treat out there to my hockey lovers. Also, man, in this jam-packed episode, we got breaking news across the NBA. Breaking news that I didn't think that I would see as well. And that breaking news is that the Denver Nuggets, a team that I thought that could make a run in the NBA playoffs in the Western Conference. Not sure if you guys caught, you know, my cameo appearance, man, on the Weekly Dog Sports Betting Podcast with Mako and my man E. Salim, Mr. Taylor Street in the Hot Wire segment. You know, just talked about, you know, I thought that the Denver Nuggets could potentially come out of the Western Conference this season. And with the firing of Mike Malone, man, and, you know, the GM Calvin Booth, I'm definitely going to scale that back. Because I couldn't believe this news. Man. And this is just a shakeup in the Western Conference. As you know, the Memphis Grizzlies, you know, a couple weeks ago, you know, got rid of Taylor Jenkins right before the playoffs as well. And so two teams that, you know, I consider, you know, contenders in the West, you know, definitely having a puncher's chance in the Western Conference, for them to be able to fire their coaches, you know, week basically into the final part of the NBA season was definitely a whirlwind. And, man, so we definitely going to get into that, man, as that news just broke, you know, a couple hours ago. Unbelievable. Also, we're going to get into the NBA. Speaking of the NBA, man, you know, we're going to take a look across the National Basketball Association as I have my Big Five. I got my Big Five NBA power rankings, man. My final NBA Big Five of the season, as we're now officially a week away from the conclusion of the NBA season. The Wild Wild West has definitely been the Wild Wild West. The Lakers have been impressive the last couple of games, knocking off the Oklahoma City Thunder. We're going to get into that. But, definitely these Big Five power rankings, man, there's been a lot of shifts and movements in the power rankings. So we definitely going to get into that. And also, too, we got Major League Baseball on the forefront, man. For my baseball lovers out there, man, we definitely going to talk a little baseball in this episode as well. Just what I've seen, so far, man, in the first, basically 2 weeks of the Major League Baseball season. So we're going to get into that. But let's talk about this NCAA tournament that jumped off on the men and the women's side. And, I'm going to go with ladies first. Definitely ladies first. And the UConn Huskies, man. This is a team all season long has kind of been under the radar a little bit. They had the number 2 seed coming into the NCAA tournament. And Paige Breckers, she's been, just a staple up there at Stores. Just her 5th season, just at Stores, man. And, she made it, official a couple weeks ago is that, she's definitely going to go into the WNBA. She actually had a year left for eligibility, due to the numerous injuries that she's had in her career up there at Connecticut. And I should have seen the tea leaves, man, in the national semifinal game, because UConn, what impressed me about them so much, man, is that their ability to play team basketball and the effort on the defensive end. And for Gino, man, there's been a lot of talk about, he's definitely one of the greatest coaches of any sport of all time, man. You win 12 championships. I can't say enough, man, for that. I mean, it speaks for itself. I mean, this man is 12-1 in championship games in his tenure up at the University of Connecticut. In Connecticut, they took a little different kind of vibe over the last couple of years. Now, I know you guys obviously remember, their run in the 2000s and so forth. And, they had a big-time streak, multiple, undefeated seasons. And a lot of people were saying they were bad for college basketball. And whenever you have a team, man, win close over 100-plus consecutive games that they did during that little stretch, in the 2000s, man, is that it can be bad for the sport. Because at some point, especially all of my sports lovers out there, man, you want it to be, just fair game kind of. Obviously, you're going to have your big wigs and you're going to have your pillars in respective sports. But you want to make it seem like, everybody at least has a fair opportunity, man, to be competitive and winning, whether it's an NBA championship, whether it's a national championship in college, whether it's a Super Bowl in the National Football League, whether it's a World Series in MLB. And UConn, they was the big bad wolf, but things started to transition a little bit. As we had, up-and-comers such as the University of South Carolina with the great job that Dawn Staley's had there, just with the numerous All-Americans that she's had over the last couple of years, and Aja Wilson, and, just all what they've had, man, is just remarkable. Aaliyah Boston and Cardozo. And so for them, they came into this tournament, I would say kind of underrated because they was going for a 3 out of 4 championship situation for them. Ironically, they was an underdog as a number 1 seed in the national championship game. And I picked South Carolina because of just Dawn Staley, man. I just think that she's just a G out here, man, in the coaching landscape. She's definitely, pulled up the University of South Carolina, out of what I consider, not being one of the most top teams, say, in women's college basketball, to definitely one of the marquee teams in college basketball, especially winning 3 winning the national championships there she's done. But UConn was on one, and, strong and easily, just the job that they was able to do. They held Paige down because Paige didn't have, one of those outstanding, Herculean type of games. She kind of played her game, but she was going with the flow and just going with the flow of just that team. And they had an outstanding run, man. And that game was over pretty much at halftime as South Carolina got rolled, man. So once again, congratulations to the UConn Lady Huskies, man, winning their 12th national championship. Put some respect on their name. And then we gonna transition. To the men's Final Four. And man, it was epic, man. Having 4 number 1 seeds going to the Final Four down in San Antonio, it was must-see TV. I think that, if you look at last season with college basketball, to me, last season was really a dud. because there was a lot of people that kind of knew that the University of Connecticut and Danny Hurley and the great job that he done at Connecticut on the men's side, that they was going to pretty much easily win the national championship. I mean, they was rolling teams, straight rolling teams last year. And I'm not going to front on y'all, man. That probably was my least hyped that I've been in the tournament, man, probably since I've been watching the tournament. You know, I watch more ladies tournament games than I did, you know, say men's tournament games. And no disrespect to the ladies, obviously, because they've been doing their thing. But, you know, I thought that the ladies by far had a more polarizing, you know, tournament situation than the men did last year. And a lot of that has to do with the name, image, and likeness. You know, it's just kind of changed college basketball as a whole. You know, obviously, really more importantly, the transfer rule has really changed college basketball because, you know, players, you got, you know, guys out here, you know, on their fifth school and things of that particular nature. And, you know, I feel like it's the wild, wild west, man, with that. And so coming into this season, you know, I think that the SEC having a great run that they did, man, 14 teams getting into the tournament. And just to culminate with just the matchups in the Final Four, to say the least, we had an SEC matchup between Florida and Auburn. You know, Florida was able to stifle Auburn, man, in a close, you know, back and forth type of game. And Clayton Jr., you know, he was the talk of the tournament. This man was hotter than a firecracker, you know, putting in that work and just the versatility that, you know, University of Florida had, man. And they, to me, was probably the hottest team going into the tournament other than the University of Houston as well as Duke. You know, all three of those teams was super hot going into the tournament. And you had a classic matchup with just the great defensive job that, you know, Houston has done all season long. You know, I thought they were the best defensive team in college basketball, to me, bar none. And this championship game was one of the best championship games that I've seen in a long time. You know, I mean, we obviously, you know, a few episodes back, man, I gave my, you know, my tournament runs that I felt that was epic. You know, runs just into the NCAA tournament and just exciting games we've seen over the last, say, you know, 40 plus years for my super OGs in the NCAA tournament. But this game was classic, man, as Florida was able to pull out, you know, a tough, gritty game. They was down by 12 in the second half of this basketball game. I thought Houston, they was able to put, you know, Clayton Jr. on clamps. I mean, straight on clamps. I mean, having the donut in the first half. I mean, the most important thing about him that I thought that was impressive, though, is that he didn't force anything and he was able to give up the basketball. The great head coaching job that Florida did on that, you know, on that screen, and just dumping the ball into the inside and just kind of playing inside out a little bit. In Houston, they had all the momentum. I mean, just a great job that Kevin Sampson has done for the University of Houston, getting them back to being a, you know, relevant program. It was great to see Akeem Olajuwon, you know, Jim Nance, you know, an alum of the University of Houston in the stands. In Houston, and a lot of people, you know, been ragging Houston, man, over the last, say, you know, few hours since the game is concluded, man, since last night. But you know, I think that Florida, they ratcheted up their defense. I thought that Kevin Sampson, I thought he coached a little bit tight in the second half, especially late in the second half. You know, LJ Cryer, man, who has been an outstanding player, man, for them all season long, has really been their version of what I call Chauncey Billups, man, Mr. Big Shot. And in the second half, he looked a little worn down. And he looked not to really go for a shot, which I thought was interesting. You know, we definitely got to talk about the huge turnovers from Houston, man, at the end of the game, man. I just couldn't believe it, man. They forced it. I think that Kevin Sampson, even though he's done a great job, you know, all season long, you know, I thought that he kind of coached, you know, with his hands in his pocket, you know, from a scheme standpoint. And they paid for it big time. Clayton Jr. was able to, you know, get off the men, get his game back right. You know, had a couple huge and ones towards the end of that basketball game, man. And Florida actually showed that they were tougher than Houston in the late part of that game, man. And so, congratulations, man, definitely to the Florida Gators, man. They're a team that a lot of people felt going into the tournament to win the national championship. You know, I had this game between these two teams in my bracket. You know, even though I had Houston winning the national championship, I can't be mad, man, with the outcome, man. Just seeing great basketball, man. It was an exciting basketball game, and definitely I think that it pumped some juice into the overall landscape of men's college basketball, man. So we'll definitely see what it do going into next season. But with all that being said, man, you know, coming up, man, we're going to definitely, you know, kick some game across the National Basketball Association. Also, we can't forget about the breaking news that had jumped off, man, with Mike Malone getting fired. Him and Calvin Booth, general manager of the Denver Nuggets. Breaking news today, so we're definitely going to get into that. Also, too, coming up, man, I got my NBA Big Five, my final NBA Big Five, man. of this season. So we'll definitely see what it do. First and foremost, man, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate you. Yeah. We on Fire Sports Podcast. The spot. Welcome back. And we're going to switch gears a little bit, man. We're going to jump into the National Basketball Association, the NBA, man, as we move into the final week of the NBA regular season. And the regular season, man, so far, especially, man, most notably in the Western Conference, has definitely been the Wild Wild West this year, man, as we got a bunch of teams, man, locking in, man, for seed in the Western Conference. You know, obviously we got Oklahoma City, you know, clinching the number 1 seed, man, best record in the NBA. And we got the Houston Rockets pretty much clinched that 2nd seed, man. Great job that Ime Udoka has done down there in Houston, man. This team is a gritty, tough team. Not sure if you guys seen that little grudge match game, man, against the Golden State Warriors the other day. You know, they held Steph Curry, man, to 3 points. I couldn't believe that, man. And we had, you know, a few little dust-ups, man, between Draymond Green, man, and Sengun, and just, you know, a little chatter between, you know, Steph Curry and Ime Udoka as well during that game. And, you know, I just thought that, man, the Houston Rockets, man, they got something to prove this season, man. And Udoka, you know, he showed his worth as a head coach. We all know the whole situation that happened, you know, with the Boston Celtics. And, you know, I think that this guy is definitely a championship level coach, and just the job he's done down there, you know, in H-Town. And so those two teams are locked pretty much in 1 and 2 seed, man, in the Western Conference. But 3 through 6 has been just a war, man. Los Angeles Lakers currently, man, sitting in that 3rd spot. You know, they've had, you know, probably their best 2 wins of the regular season, man, with that double up against the Oklahoma City Thunder, being able to knock them off on the road as well as in Los Angeles. And there's been a lot of, you know, people and a lot of chatter, man. You know, the Los Angeles Lakers has always been, you know, a team that, you know, just gives various opinions. And so, for me, you know, it's a situation where this team, man, they've been 5-5 in their last 10 games, you know, of the last 10 games of the regular season. And it seems like, man, for every win that the Los Angeles Lakers have, man, we hit this whole hyperbole. Oh, man, they can win an NBA championship. Oh, best team in the league. Oh. And I'm like, man, just slow down a little bit. You just hold your horses a little bit. Now, for Oklahoma City, they definitely got something to prove, man. There's a lot of people, you know, just chattering about, man, that they're a contender or a pretender. I mean, they definitely was on track to win possibly up to close to 70 games this season, man. So they've had an outstanding year. You know, I think their head coach, man, he's one of the most underrated coaches in the league, man. And this is a team that's the number 1 defensive team in all metrics. So, you know, they check the boxes, man, as far as, you know, what they've been able to bring to the table all season long. They've been consistent all season long. You know, I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is definitely in pole position to win the MVP award, man. And so, you know, coming up probably on my next episode, man, I might make that official, man, with my MVP, you know, rankings, man. But, you know, this is a team that they still got a lot to prove. You know, obviously they're a young team. A lot of people don't believe in them. But here's the thing. You know, I remember, you know, a few years back, we had another young team that a lot of people didn't have a lot of confidence in because they didn't have that playoff experience. And, you know, they had a new head coach in the fold. They had just, you know, fired a coach that, you know, brought them back into relevancy. And I'm talking about the Golden State Warriors. You know, that first NBA championship, there was a lot of chatter out there, man. A jump shooting team, never win an NBA championship, and then they needed better play in the post. And, you know, Steve Kerr was, you know, a very young coach at the time. And so I've seen this before. And so to me, it's really a wait and see approach, man. To Oklahoma City is really all about the matchups in the Western Conference, to say the least. You know, who matches up with who, especially when you got, you know, teams that between the 3 and the 6 seed, man, you literally got, you know, 2 games between teams, between, you know, the Los Angeles Lakers currently sitting in at number 3 and the team sitting in at number 6, the Golden State Warriors. And the Golden State Warriors has been playing some great basketball since Jimmy Butler has gotten there. Definitely for me, you know, I think that they got a puncher's chance. You know, I've been going back and forth with the Golden State Warriors because to me, you know, they have to solidify their inside game a little bit. And I just think that it's really about matchups because, Jokic is the best big man, probably the best player in the whole NBA. And now, for me, they've been on a slippery slope. And this is even before the breaking news that came out today. I have a lot of confidence in Denver because I think that for me, it was really about the matchups of who they matched up with. But when you fire Mike Malone, literally a week before the end of the regular season, and Stan Kroenke, the owner of the Denver Nuggets, he's also the owner of the Los Angeles Rams, married to one of the Waltons, who owns Walmart. He's the biggest landowner in the United States currently, Stan Kroenke. So he rolling in the dough. And for him to fire Mike Malone, who I feel is that one of the best coaches in the NBA right now, I don't like this move one bit. One bit. Because this is a different situation than Memphis firing Taylor Jenkins, a couple weeks ago now. Because Memphis has never won an NBA championship. Memphis, had a rough kind of last 2 years, basically, with the whole Ja Morant situation. And then last year, just with them being perennially injured. And you got the Ja Morant situation again, with the, whole, gun gesture situation. And so I can understand maybe from Memphis standpoint, maybe, I'm still not a believer in finding a head coach, a week and a half, a week for the end of the regular season. But Mike Malone is an NBA champion. And Mike Malone, helped get this team to kind of where they're at now, helped develop Nikola Jokic. And so I was very surprised by this move. And I think that this is a move that even in the Memphis standpoint is going to backfire on these organizations. I think that, to me, they let the air out the balloon of their regular season, of their season. I think Mike Malone, he's a chippy guy. He's a very, very chippy guy. He's a, son of a coach. And so, word on the street is that him and Calvin Booth, had a cold war and they weren't seeing eye to eye. And I'm not going to front. I've been very skeptical of Calvin Booth over the last couple of years because he's transitioned his team since they won a championship, letting KCP get out of the door, let Bruce Brown get out of the door via free agency. And those was your glue guys for Memphis. For Denver. Those was your glue guys. Guys that you can't really put a price tag on them. You can't put a worth value on them because they're guys that come to get it both on the defensive end and also too on the offensive end. And so they put Braun into the lineup, and I like Braun, man. Braun, I think he's a scrappy guy. Remember seeing him at the University of Kansas. He's part of the championship team, obviously. But in the Western Conference and the NBA, man, you got to get your weight up with talent. I think Mike Malone has tried to stretch out as much as he can with the talent that they have. But it's not Mike Malone's fault that Jamal Murray has been not Jamal Murray. He had a nice little stretch doing, maybe about a month or so ago when he dropped, the 50 piece and, got hot. But then he got nicked up again. And so it's not his fault that Michael Porter Jr. is really not playing, at the customer standard that he's used to. You can't blame him, obviously, for Nikola Jokic out here dropping 60-piece triple-doubles, man. And so I think that, to me, if you're going to fire a guy, I think that guy you needed to fire was Calvin Booth for just how he put this team kind of together. And so, to me, man, we'll see what it do, man, for the Denver Nuggets moving forward. I definitely have lost confidence in them, man, at this point, because I think that Mike Malone, even though there's been a little strife over the last couple of weeks and then haven't been playing too well, I think at the end of the day, this team has championship experience, and I think it's really all about the matchups, man, in the Western Conference, and I thought that they still had a puncher's chance of getting deep in the Western Conference playoffs and having an outside shot at winning another NBA championship. So we'll definitely see what it do, man, but I was surprised by that move, to say the least, surprised by that move. And then also, too, just in the NBA, man, in the lexicon of the NBA, you obviously switching gears to the Eastern Conference side. It's a situation where the Boston Celtics, man, and the Cleveland Cavaliers, they look like they're the best two teams in the Eastern Conference. You got the Knicks right now sitting at that 3 seed. And I think that the New York Knicks, they made a big-time move, obviously bringing Karl-Anthony Towns in, trading Julius Randle out to Minnesota. And Jalen Brunson is still their best player. He's still their best player. And I just think that you put a lot in the bag of Jalen Brunson when he's your best player on your team, because, Jalen going to come to get it, man. But at the end of the day, Jalen's a guy that, he's a smaller guy, smaller stature guy. We seen last season, him getting nicked up, doing the playoff run, and just he was kind of like the walking wounded man at the end. I think that the Knicks overall with Tom Thibodeau, there's been a lot of talk, in his whole career about him playing guys too much. But Tom trying to win games. And he knows that at the end of the day that the Knicks, they're not a team. They're not good enough to kind of rest on their laurels of what they did, last year. Shout out to Leon Rose and what he did with all the moves and everything like that. But I just think at the end of the day, there's a pecking order in the Eastern Conference. And I think that the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers are easily, to me, the two front runners. I can't wait till these two teams lock horns, man, in the Eastern Conference Finals, when we eventually get deep into the playoffs and see what that thing do. And so we'll see. It's been an interesting season. As I mentioned, coming up a little bit later, I got my final Big Five, my NBA Big Five final edition of the regular season coming up. But before we get into that, man, we'll talk a little bit baseball, man. A little bit baseball, man. And so we had, opening days. We've had now, the week and a half or so in the MLB season. And, a lot of people coming into to this season, had the Los Angeles Dodgers with just endless amount of payroll and money, man, with Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts. Is that they're the front runner, man, to win another World Series. Obviously they won it last year. It was a great thing, man, to see Ice Cube in the 6-4 with the trophy, man, on opening day at Dodger Stadium. I had an opportunity, man, to visit Dodger Stadium a few years back, man. It definitely was on my bucket list of stadiums and arenas, in the sporting landscape, man. So got a treat going out there to Chavez Ravine. Had a great time. And I'm not going to front, just with the talent that the Dodgers got, I would agree that they're a team that's probably in the front runner position, as far as, just a favorite to win another World Series. But I've been impressed, with that division that they in, man. The NL West, you got this, San Diego Padres, man, having a good season, a good start. They started off undefeated, man, till they came to Chicago and Wrigley Field, and my Cubs was able to knock them off. But if you look at the NL West right now, they probably get two wild card teams, man, out of the NL West, man, because the San Francisco Giants, they playing good baseball right now, and so we'll see what it do. My Cubs, great win, man, the other day, man, against the Texas Rangers. They've been doing a good job so far. I've been impressed with what I've seen right now. We're leading the division right now, man, over the Milwaukee Brewers. And so the bullpen is still an issue, man, for my Cubs, man. Definitely hold your breath every time the bullpen comes into the game for the Cubs, man, but I've been impressed so far. On the other end, man, can't forget about Chicago White Sox, man. And, last year we broke the record for most losses in Major League Baseball history. Shout out to my man Mako, man, just having the swing dig for opening day as he always do. Just a tradition out there tailgating, congregating, man, with the fans and also to some of my OGs out there. So it was a good look, man, but it's going to be a long season for the Chicago White Sox, man. I think they win more games this year than they did last year. But this is a team that is in straight rebuild mode. We'll definitely see what the White Sox do, man. It's going to be a long season, man, for Sox fans, man, on the south side of Chicago, man, and Sox fans across the country, man. So, as I mentioned, coming up, I got my NBA Big Five, my final NBA Big Five, man, of the regular season. Once again, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot. All right, man, before we get out of here, can't forget, man, to check your boy out on YouTube, We On Fire Sports. Also, too, man, on Twitter at We On Fire Sports. Also, too, wherever podcasts can be looked at. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, man, you can definitely check me out, too, making some appearances, man, on the Weekly Dog Sports Betting Podcast with my man Issa Aleem, Mr. Taylor Street, and also, too, Mako. You can definitely check them boys out at Firebox 2300. They got that sauce for you over there. And so, I got my final NBA Big Five, man. My final NBA Big Five of the regular season. It's always been a treat, man, whenever I'm able to deliver the Big Fives to you guys. And this NBA regular season right now, we're in the final week of the season, man. And so, especially in the Western Conference, man, teams are fighting for seeding. You got a couple, teams below the radar, man. And once again, congratulations to the Detroit Pistons, man, for clinching a playoff spot. Last year, man, there was a lot of people throwing the Detroit Pistons in the dump. There was a dumpster fire, to say the least. They got rid of Monty Williams and moved on to J.B. Bickerstaff. And so, this team, man, they playing some great basketball right now. Shout out to Cade Cunningham, man. Shout out to the city of Detroit, man. Detroit, stand up. Can't forget about y'all. Also, too, my Bulls. Can't forget about my Chicago Bulls, man. My Bulls been on fire right now, man. Kobe White has just been on one, and congratulations to him for winning NBA Player of the Month. It's well deserved. The Bulls and, what I call my young Bulls, they looking good out here, man. And hopefully the Bulls, right now, they locked in. They clinched, the play-in spot. We've been in that play-in spot the last couple of seasons. So maybe the Bulls can, make a push, man, in the whole playoff tournament, man, and, play-in tournament, rather, and be able to get themselves into a legitimate playoff spot. Also, too, can't forget, man, congratulations to head coach Billy Donovan getting that Hall of Fame look. As we all just seen, man, last night, his former team, man, the Florida Gators won the NCAA championship. First time they won a championship since Billy Donovan was down there in Gainesville with Joakim Noah and Al Horford and Corey Brewer. And so we going to get into this Big Five, man, this Big Five. And coming in at number 5, this is the most polarizing team in the NBA. I mean, this team, man, and they fan base, man, and they love us. They just be on one, man. They just be on one, man. For every win that this team win, man, it's just a lot of talk. Oh, they win an NBA championship. Oh, best team in the league. Oh, man, best team in the Western Conference. But I'm going to put some respect on their name, man, because I was impressed for the last 2 games. I seen them head-to-head with the team that has the best record in the NBA, and they won both games. And you guys know I'm talking about the Los Angeles Lakers coming in at number 5. I'm going to put a little respect on their name. Now we're going to keep it straight up here, man, is that they 5-5 in their last 10 games. But for them to knock off Oklahoma City, man, in the consecutive games, right now they sitting in as the number 3 seed in the Western Conference. I'm going to show them some love, man. I got them coming in at number 5. LeBron James and Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic finally looking like, from an offensive standpoint, he's definitely got it into gear. Defensively, man, this guy's a cone defensively. Ain't no secret about that. Him and LeBron James are both a cone defensively. They're not going to bring you nothing on the defensive end. I think that J.J. Redick, he's had mixed reviews. I was a big-time critic of him coming into the coaching position when they moved on from Darvin Ham last year. And so we'll see with the Los Angeles Lakers. I still just think that this is a team that they just an enigma. They kind of up and down, especially when they take on teams that have an efficient offensive display. This team struggles. They struggle being able to defend on the perimeter. They're very limited underneath the basket, and they're really just in a situation where they have to be hot offensively for them to be able to knock off what I call the upper echelon teams across the NBA. And I'm not going to front, man. I've been liking what I'm seeing over the last 2 games, per se, but I'm still keeping an eagle eye on the Lakers, man. Hopefully they may be able to lock into that 3rd position in the Western Conference, but we'll definitely, see what it do for them. So I got them coming in at number 5. At number 4, this is a team that I feel have been underrated all season long. All season long. This is a team that has a lot of young talent. They brought in a couple veterans, just to kind of shake up the dynamic of the team a little bit, and bringing in Fred VanVleet, playing him a huge big bag of money a couple years ago. Well deserving though for VanVleet. One of my favorite players, man. He's, from Rockford, Illinois, man. Got a chance to watch Fred VanVleet, hoop in high school in the Illinois State tournament. So I've been knowing about Fred, man, since he was a teenager. So, guy that was undrafted, man, so well deserved. You guys already know I'm talking about the Houston Rockets coming in at number 4. Ume Udoka, man, he's made this team tougher. He had, just the Jalen Green. There was a lot of mixed reviews on Jalen Green's first couple of years in the league. But he's gotten Jalen Green to mix in with just the culture that they got down there in Houston, man. And just mix in what they got going on. Got to send a shout out to Dylan Brooks. He's still been on villain mode, man, for the Houston Rockets. And I just like, obviously you got, Saul Thompson. He's been playing some good ball, man. Athletic wing guy, man. Solid defender. To me, one of the most underrated defenders in the league. Can't forget about Sengun. Congratulations to him getting that all-star tilt, earlier this season. And so this team plays with a little toughness and a little scrappiness, man. Well, I know you guys may have seen the whole situation with them and the Golden State Warriors a couple games ago, man, knocking off the Warriors. Steph Curry having a bad night at the office, having 3 points. And so this team is going to be a voice to reckon with because they sitting right now in the second seed in the Western Conference. I think that's paramount for them. They locked that seed in. So I think that they didn't want to get into that whole jungle, man, 3 through 7, basically, in the Western Conference. They avoided that whole situation. So I'm liking what I'm seeing from the Houston Rockets, man. I got them coming in at number 4. At number 3, this was a team that has kind of been iffy for me maybe over the last, I would say, week or so. This was a team that they stood at the top of my NBA Big 5 power rankings, man, for several weeks. Currently, right now, they got the best record in the league, but I got to drop them down to number 3, and I'm talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, I'm not going to make too big of a deal with the whole situation with the Los Angeles Lakers, man, them dropping a couple games to the Lakers. I think that this team, especially when you have a young team, man, they won as many games as they have. They're going to come down a little bit towards the end of the regular season, man. Things been a little monotonous for them. Shout out to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, man, is having a legendary season. I mean, averaging over a 30-piece. I mean, this guy is smooth as the other side of the pillow. He's definitely in my driver's seat of winning the NBA MVP award and well-deserving if he do so. And, last year he finished second in the MVP voting. A lot of people thought he should have been first last season. But this team, man, to me, the most important metric for the Oklahoma City Thunder, man, they're the best defensive team in the league on all metrics. And I thought that the move that they made to bring in Hartenstein from the New York Knicks has paid off big time. To me, the biggest question mark for them would be Chet Holmgren. If this young guy, man, can be able to, withstand the banging and the tugging it's going to be to get through the Western Conference and potentially get to the NBA Finals. So we'll definitely see, man, for Oklahoma City, man. But I had to move them down a little bit, man, based on what I saw against the Los Angeles Lakers. But this team definitely has a chance to move through the Western Conference and potentially get themselves to the NBA Finals. And at number 2, man, this is a team that I enjoy watching play. I enjoy watching them play, man. And I just think that the balance of this team, they're a team that is well balanced, man. They got the inside game. They got the outside game. They got, a young chop master in the back, in the backcourt running the PG. They got a guy that can close out games, man, is a big-time shot master. And I'm talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers, man. I got the Cleveland Cavaliers coming in at number 2. The job that Kenny Atkinson, man, has done with this ball club, man, as I mentioned, just with the balance, with the trees, just underneath the basket with, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley and obviously Donovan Mitchell. And they've been just very impressive. Can't forget about Darius Garland, man, and Max Strus and Alex Okoro, man. And so, to me, they are like a well-sound band, man. They're a well-sound band. They got their front man and Donovan Mitchell, like I said, man, a guy that can close out basketball games. And they're on a collision course with the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference. Definitely that Eastern Conference matchup, the Eastern Conference Finals, presumably, is going to be must-see TV. I can't wait for that series. And so I got Cleveland, man, coming in at number 2 currently right now. They got the second-best record, a little bit behind Oklahoma City for the second-best record in the league. Over 60 wins, man. I can't say more about the Cleveland Cavaliers. I got them coming in at number 2. And at number 1, man, I got the Boston Celtics at number 1. Boston, to me, I think they playing right in people's hands because there's been a lot of talk, obviously, about Oklahoma City, about Cleveland, Lakers getting their shine, so far this year. And they haven't been, Boston has kind of been, if you can be under the radar of being NBA defending champions, they're definitely under the radar. I think Jason Tatum, he's had an outstanding year, probably his best statistical season so far since he's been in the league. I think he's a little bit underrated. People obviously know who Jason Tatum is, but he got a chip on his shoulder, him and Jaylen Brown, because Jaylen Brown didn't make the Olympics last year. So, he definitely got a chip on his, chip on his shoulder. And, him being, the reigning finals MVP, I think he's, got that experience, and he's looking to get at somebody, man, in the playoffs. Like I said, Jason Tatum having another outstanding season for them. Drew Holiday, two-way guy, man, back in the fold, been nicked up a little bit during the season, but it looks like he's back kind of into the fold. You got, Al Horford, Benjamin Button himself, Kristaps Porzingis finally kind of getting off the men. Shout out to Peyton Pritchard too, man, dropping that 40 piece the other day. And the job that Joe Mazzulla has done, I think there's no more talk about Joe Mazzulla and his ability to coach a basketball team. He definitely has the ear of this team, man. And so I got the Boston Celtics, man, coming in at number 1, man, in my final NBA Big 5 power rankings. And so first and foremost, man, I appreciate, man, all the love and all the feedback, man. I hope you guys, had a great weekend, man, checking out the Final Four and the championship games, a little bit of that baseball as well as we kick into, final week of the NBA season. College has concluded, but baseball is now into the fold. We got the NFL draft coming up. So, man, I hope you guys, have a great rest of the week. I'll check you guys out, man, towards the end of the week. We on Five Sports Podcast Spot.